here we go.
Hey, everyone.
Here we are. Hello and welcome to Developer Stream. My name is Pavel Bourgeois, and as always, I am joined by the one and only Jason Slama,
Great to be here.
How are you, Jason?
Pretty good, actually. New year, refreshed, got some rest over the holidays. A lot of us did. It feels good.
It's the first stream we're doing this year.
It is. Welcome to 2020, everyone.
Numero uno. And it's
Yes.
been some time since we did this.
Well, I think, last year was pretty hard. We did a lot. I think even inside of ourselves, we weren't sure we could pull off those 4 expansions, but we're super proud we did. But ultimately, we needed to rest a little bit over the holidays. But now, with our batteries recharged, we're ready for yet another awesome year in 2020.
Ready to divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the yeah.
I know, I like saying it.
Yeah, you have a cool yeah. I like that you have a shirt. I feel I didn't dress for the occasion.
Well, 2020 new man.
New man.
Right.
All right. So we will talk about update 5.1, which is coming tomorrow. Simple as that. The overall season transition also happening tomorrow.
Yes.
Easy. But before we get into that, let's talk about some general stuff. Give you a general overview update of what we're up to, what we're kind of doing. So what happened last week? We launched Thronebreaker on Switch.
Yeah, yay!
I played it a lot.
Yep.
It actually feels really good on the Switch.
It does. That's something that we were working on last year. It just made sense.
Yep.
That's
Happy
it.
to find
End of story.
out.
I do say that some of the developers are really passionate about adding that extra better balancing in the higher difficulties.
Yeah.
So hopefully people are enjoying that. And if
Less
people
smoother.
really want it, we'll end up putting it on all platforms eventually. But there has to be a demand for it.
True that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's address something important.
Yeah.
Update on Android. Because if you look at our social media, number one thing, Android, Android, when.
I wonder if people ask at least 5 more times, it'll just change our schedule for Android.
It's like Q1 2020, Q1 2020.
No, we get
Q1
it. We appreciate your passion and your excitement for Android, and we really appreciate it. I can say that we have the game fully ported on Android. Now we're in the process of optimizing, so it runs on more than just the highest end of devices, and polishing and bug fixing. And we will very soon enter into pre-registrations, preparing for the launch. So keep an eye out for that. We are on schedule. Things are going great for Android. There's no problem.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome news. Cool.
But keep asking. It won't change much, but if it makes you feel great, why not? We're fine with it.
Since we had January, and January is kind of a month where you start planning and thinking about what's going to happen throughout the year. And now we have February, so it's kind of not January, so we shouldn't be doing yearly plans. But since we're late with this, so I mean, we're not late, we're on time. But you get my drift. So, what's the overall idea heading into 2020? What's the overall thing? I know there's some team changes where we're kind of moving around, forming new teams responsible for different aspects of the game, but that's kind of internally. What about externally? Kind of roadmap feeling, what do we want to do this year? What's the overall vision that you have?
That was a very longly worded question. Okay, let me see if I can get to what you're asking for. That's okay. We love you, Buddha. So, in December, after we were finishing up Merchants of Ophir, we were spending a lot of time thinking about what we wanted to do this year. So we started thinking about not only what we wanted to do, but how we wanted to do it. So, quality of life and not working like crazy, especially when you're updating a game every month, is really important to me and to try and the team. And while it's impossible to completely avoid crunch, we made some really big strides into keeping the balance of life a bit healthier for the team. But still, I think we could do better. So this year, we're kind of structuring our approach so that we can do more than just try to brush out a whole bunch of expansions really fast, but still actually do more from a player perspective as well. Launch more features, more polish, accomplish more. So we've been changing a bit of the way how we work internally, so it slowed us down a bit for December and January, but now things have all settled into place. We're really kicking into high gear. We made the conscious decision to not go for 4 expansions again this year. That's just not going to happen. It's going to be quite a bit more of a delay between the next one. It really took a lot out of us to do 4, and I don't want to keep rushing it. I want the expansions to be of higher quality. I don't want to just rush out a bunch of expansions with a bunch of dead cards just to say that we're growing the card pool. I'd rather that we do regular updates like we're going to do this time. Although we won't do as big of a balance update every month, I'd like to keep the game fresh every month. It's really important. But then important. Focus on the expansions being as amazing as possible, and the ideas and the card art already coming forth, and everything that's happening for the first expansion this year is something we're all really internally excited for.
Awesome idea.
And I can't wait for you guys to see it, and hopefully that'll go great. There's a lot of non-expansion related stuff that we want to do this year. That some of it will be a big surprise, and why the roadmap felt maybe a bit empty for some people when we talked about it late last year was because we don't really want to talk too much and spoil the fun of the stuff that we want to do. Just kind of the surprise expansion. There's surprises that we want to save for you this year, and unfortunately, they're quite big. So we have a good chunk of time on some pretty ambitious, cool stuff we want to do this year, but we can't quite talk about in the near future.
I've also seen an overall shift, especially with 5.1, which is the update we'll be talking about today, that instead of nerfing a lot of things, we're actually buffing a lot of things.
I mean, some things need to be nerfed.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, some things are just
still, like if you think about it, the overall approach always has been seen by our community like, oh, you guys are just nerfing stuff to the ground. Well, actually, we're buffing some stuff to bring it up.
Mostly things will get stronger. Try to add more variety into the meta that might have felt stale, especially since we didn't do much of an update over the holidays. So we thought, this is time that you guys would appreciate probably a bit more of a shake-up.
Yeah. Shake-up?
A shake-up.
A shake-up in the meta. Yeah. I like that one. Another thing to mention is with this update, so 5.1, we are dropping full mill value for reworked cards. What's the overall idea behind that?
It's something that we never really felt great about it. It felt like something that was a good idea on paper, but had a lot of repercussions. You'll see us making interesting decisions throughout the year because we made this decision, other things that we were afraid to do because of the full mill value. For example, we're thinking about auto milling extra copies in some cases, but there's some people that are happy with this change from what I saw, and that reinforces a bit that I think we're heading in the right direction.
You kind of spoiled it on
They were afraid of milling cards, which I think is not the way it should be. Trying to play this game to find out what's going to be full mill value, that never felt really great to me.
Agreed.
And I think with the way that you can progress in your collection, which we'll try to always remain as generous, if not more generous with, then I don't feel like it was a very valuable policy for us. It was just hurting us more than helping us. And I know some people might not agree with that, but hopefully we can move past it.
Yeah, what I didn't like the most is some people posting and bragging that, you can go over the system and you can abuse it. And
that was really feels bad for us.
It feels really, really bad, especially for some other people in the community where they're getting this negative.
There is one thing that I'm seeing right now is we decided to premify the starting tactical advantage.
Yes.
There's no more non-premium tactical.
Yes. Maybe we're asking advantage for that.
I don't know.
A lot of people
I don't know why people are asking for us to premify things.
I like
We're listening. Premifying all the tokens.
You know how it is.
Is something that is a stretch goal that if we manage to do, I would love to do. But again, it's not an easy flip of a switch. But it is something that I'm actively looking into us potentially doing.
You can actually show it if you guys want to see it.
We have premified tactical advantage, guys.
Oh my God! It happened.
I have not
Best
promised.
match ever.
I have not promised premified tokens.
Yeah.
I have no date when it would happen, but I have agreed in my mind that it would be cool that when your board is covered in tokens, that they would be premified as well. So
I see that the emails I sent made it to the right person finally.
Yeah. I just wish it was a bit easier and faster for us to do. Premiums are a lot of work, guys.
Yeah, really, they are a lot of work. They're a lot of work.
But it looks great, so that's cool.
Yay! So because everybody's like, you know what? I have a full deck, fully decked out premium, but the tactical advantage is not premium, and my OCD is like, oh no.
Now it will be, so that's cool. That was worth mentioning. It's awesome.
Perfect. All right, so you want to get into the update? We'll be going faction by faction, but first we'll start with game fixes, then some of the new features, and then we'll start with neutral.
Again, this will be a fairly large update, so we'll be doing highlights today.
Yes.
We won't go through everything. If you want all the details, you'll have to look at the patch notes, which should be out
tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow with the update.
Awesome.
Yes. So game fixes, starting off first. So this is something that we don't have to show, we can talk about.
Yep.
So incoming triggers can be canceled out. So cards that have targeting and income, like Dip in the Point Tower, for example, will allow users to choose a target before committing to play the card.
Yeah, this was something that bothered us when we were making Nilfgaard expansion and Syndicate, and we just hadn't had the chance to go back and fix it.
Yeah.
But now the income will properly work in such a way that you're not committed to playing the card the second you put it in. It's a small quality of life thing, but I think it should be appreciated by people who play Syndicate.
Yeah, I saw some people mentioning that they wanted this change. So it's a subtle change, but it's quite important. It goes a long way.
Yeah.
Okay, added tooltip system to cards in board for mobile version of the game. So what does that mean?
Yeah,
that's very cryptic.
This one's going to be hard to explain with words, so people will hopefully experience it when they're mobile players.
You explained it to me today. It was very like
when we were making the mobile version, when you tap on a card, we were afraid there'd be confusion between activating an order and trying to see what a card is. But then ultimately, like leader abilities, and as a new player, we felt it was really hard to tell what cards do. And it was a bit inconsistent with the way the rest of our UI worked. So in this update, the first tap on a card will now show tooltips.
Yes.
Second tap will activate orders. So if you want to use an order through tapping, you can just double tap or drag. That works as before. But generally, tooltips should appear in a nicer way for new players after this update on mobile.
Okay, cool.
It might take a bit of adjusting for people who are used to the current paradigm, but it felt for everyone who tested internally that you got used to it very fast, and it felt like what it should have been from the beginning. So hopefully this transition is just a nice upgrade for everyone. But if you're having difficulty with this, let us know. We'll be listening, and there's always a chance we'll change something.
It's nice, especially that we're doing things for new players, where we've seen an influx of new players, which is awesome. So, and probably more coming with Android, of course.
I hope so.
All right. In pro rank matches, the opponent's nickname will be hidden until the final results screen. So,
did the issue get resolved here?
Most likely, it will get resolved, or you will not see your opponent's nickname throughout the whole,
including the results screen. If that's the case, sorry, some things are really done at the last second.
Yes.
We will fix it in the next update at the latest, if not in a hotfix. But generally, we wanted to hide your opponent's nickname in a match in pro rank to reduce, let's call it the temptation to do win trading.
Yes, or contacting that player, talking to him in any form.
It's also hopefully great for streamers. It'll make it less likely that an opponent will know who they're against, go onto their stream and snipe it. It's a nice, hopefully, little quality of life for the upper echelons of ranked players.
Exactly. And this kind of plays into also another thing that we're doing, because we're working on the website for Gwent Masters, because we'll be updating everything to show off Season 2. And the first thing that will be there is we won't be showing also faction MMR, so you won't see the splits for Monster, Skellige, Syndicate, blah, 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 blah. So you won't see that, you'll just see the number of matches and the total MMR. So that's one thing, and I think that's the biggest update. And of course, we'll be updating the website to reflect all these things, all these changes. So
I think another common question that I was reading today was what's going on with the tournament platform.
Yes, that is something that we're working on, but
can
we talk a little bit more about it?
From a client perspective, we're pretty much ready to go with this update. So the game client itself can support the tournament platform. We're just finishing up the actual user experience on the website. I don't have an exact date that we'll launch it. We probably will run the first qualifiers without it, unfortunately. So that's a bit sad, but we'd rather wait till it's ready and test it properly before we release it. But it is,
I mean, it's a big thing. It needs to be very fleshed out.
We don't want to rush out something that falls flat. We want it to come out as good as possible. So, All
right, next topic. Something that was in the previous patch notes that we said is going to start with this season transition, and it will. So now losing less ranks at the start of a new season. So from ranks 1 to 13, players will lose 2 ranks. From 14 to 23, 1 rank, and 0 ranks from 25 to 30. As for pro rank players, you will lose 3 ranks apart from the top 500 players.
So. And I mean, this was a topic that we saw a lot of you talking about. Is the deranking was a bit too aggressive at the end of the seasons. It felt bad. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. Let us know if this causes problems, but hopefully this is just something that's better for your life. Yeah.
Simple as that. So, you want to get into cards?
Let's get into the cards.
I know what to start with. I saw it.
This is probably one of the few provision-only changes that we will talk about today, but I think everyone has been talking about this card more than any other one. It is, of course, Redea.
Redea, the one and only.
We did not want to overly nerf her. We wanted to try a smaller nerf before going very crazy. She has a 2 provision increase. She's from 10 to 12. That's it.
That's it.
If anyone's expecting a bigger nerf, sorry, we don't want to nerf a card until it's unplayable.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that it? Like comments, it's fair.
If it continues to be crazy, we'll look at it again, but right now we think this is a sufficient nerf to hopefully, with everything else that we're doing, hold on guys, there's a lot more coming that will hopefully change her let's say, frequency in the meta.
Yeah. What's the general approach, Jason, for this?
Well, we touched it on a bit more. We want to bring up cards that are less played.
Yeah.
And try to buff them up a bit.
Yeah, to make them more appealing.
Without, touching every single unplayed card, but we picked some of the longest untouched ones, or in general just tried to give some love. Instead of tearing things down, which I think was something that always made the game feel worse in the past, we're going to try and build some stuff up a bit.
Plus some things with bronze specials, so kind of tweaking the provision on them.
Well, there's some bronzes that are like 8 provisions, and so their effects are kind of scary, and you can have 2 of them, so you'll see that we've touched a few of those. I think there's one, if I skip ahead a bit here on our list, is Adrenaline Rush, for example.
I can actually show that one.
Adrenaline Rush was a really strong effect. We were afraid to give it a lower provision as a bronze. We haven't touched every single bronze like this, although we were tempted to. So we reworked this card. It is now boost an allied unit by 8 for 5 provision if there are no other units on that row. We feel this is more in line to what a neutral bronze should be. We know that we're losing potentially some meme crazy stuff with the resilience, but we aren't super fan of what was going on with that anyways. So this is an example of a bronze just being brought into the lower provision range.
Yeah.
We feel like if a bronze goes into like 7 or 8 provisions, that it's starting to be more like a gold card in its effect.
Yeah.
And we're trying to avoid that if possible.
All right, cool. You want to move on to the poison?
Yeah, poison tweaks. I don't know what you as a community were expecting for us to do poison. It's clear that it is receiving a lot of love from you guys. You guys love poison. You want more poison, right? Let's add more poison to the game, lower its provision cost, more poison. We don't want to overly nerf poison, so we did 2 small neutral provision changes in poison. And first off, with Maral having 1 increased provision. So we're valuing his poison a bit stronger than before. And the second one, which I don't know if we need to bring up on screen, would be the King Cobra will also go from 4 to 5 provisions.
Yeah.
So poison's just a little bit weaker in terms of provision with everything else happening. We'll keep an eye out on poison, see if it's a real issue. There are other cards coming that should maybe help people find answers to poison. For example, Crow's Eye.
Yeah.
Crow's Eye is being reworked to something hopefully a bit more valuable. No, that would not be Crow's Eye. There you go. It is now going to be a 4 provision neutral card. Purify an allied unit and boost it by 3. So now it'll be easy for any faction to include sort of a pretty good value 4 provision card.
Yeah.
It might be pretty good with also Skellige trying to purify that nasty doom off of one of its crows, for example. I know I had fun, even though I never managed to make it super viable, trying to purify a whole row of crows so that I can get that giant beast buff at the end. But this is better than trigger an allied death wish, I believe is what Crow's Eye used to do.
Something like that.
So it might find its way as a tech tool if you feel like poison is overrunning it.
And we just skip one more, which is Epidemic. I'll go to Epidemic then.
Epidemic is another one of the bronze cards we reworked. Again, its effect was so crazy that we had to keep it at the higher provision range. We weren't super fan of it. It wasn't seeing much play. So it is now destroy a 4 provision cost card for 5 provision.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what its power is. That is now its bronze effect.
Yeah. Also throughout the factions that we'll be going into, you actually will see that artifact removal is now something that is neutral only, so a neutral only mechanic.
You'll notice in some things we talk about later that we are removing artifact removal from faction-specific cards, although it will still remain in neutral. So it will be more of a tech choice that everyone has equal access to. And I think that's all our highlights that we want to talk about for neutral.
That's all for neutral.
Okay.
In terms of the highlights, of
highlights, yeah. There's I think at least 15, 20 more provision power changes for.
I think the designers mentioned today it's like 19 cards per faction that are getting like changes. It's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, it's an extensive update. So I recommend you read the patch notes tomorrow.
I see a lot of people already commenting on scenarios. We're not changing scenarios fundamentally with this update.
Yeah.
There's going to be some provision changes on 2 of them, Monsters and Syndicate, but otherwise,
I think so, yeah.
They're not fundamentally changing, although we will keep an eye on it.
So what? We're moving on to monsters? Monsters. So general approach for monsters.
Well, monsters obviously needed a bit of love. We didn't go too crazy with this update for monsters, but we did take a look at all the Wild Hunt cards.
Yeah.
So we did a pass on the Wild Hunt cards to find ways to make it better.
Yeah.
There's unfortunately not enough Wild Hunt cards in the game to make like a full archetype within Wild Hunt cards only, at least for now. So we really embraced dominance as the theme for Wild Hunt. Let us start with our Immelrith rework. Immelrith is now deploy, set allied unit power to 7. Dominance, set a unit's power to 7 instead. So it can be used to remove something that is very big if you have dominance. It can buff a little 1 power token or, little necker up to 7 as a late last game thing. It's a bit of a different card. I think its power is also a bit higher. It's now 5 to 7, and its provision is 8 to 12. So it's potentially a 14 power play. Well, 13, if you hit a 1 power. It can also be used defensively in some cases.
Agreed.
So it's a bit of a different. I think the next one we should talk about is actually Nithril.
Oh, you want Nithril? Okay.
Yeah, because Nithril, I know that's not the order we thought about earlier, but Nithril is essentially the old Immelrith.
Yeah.
So we moved Immelrith to Nithril. Nithril is now order melee damage unit by 1, dominance damage unit by 2 instead, cooldown 1. The reason we did this is we wanted Immelrith to be a bit more iconic. We didn't want him to be a simple order or damage card.
Yeah.
But we also felt like this effect needed to continue existing, so we moved it to Nithril, who was artifact removal, which is no longer in monsters.
So no actual. Yeah, I mean, he will see more
yes,
play now.
He saw play as artifact removal, but since we wanted to remove that, we wanted to find a new role for him.
Yeah.
Moving on to Immelrith's Wrath.
All right.
This one is not a fundamental rework. I would say it's more of a buff. Immelrith's Wrath works like before. He will damage an enemy unit by the power of your highest allied unit. However, if you control Immelrith, destroy enemy unit instead. So again, really caring about having the highest unit on the board.
Yeah.
An example of, again, us embracing that a bit is if you look at Wild Hunt Hound. He's also been reworked. He'll be a bit closer to another doggo that we know in monsters that likes to grow. Wild Hound is now dominance, and at the end of your turn, boost self by 1.
Yeah.
So if you have the highest unit, he will continue growing. And lastly, I think the last one we changed for Wild Hunt was the Wild Hunt Warrior. Ability changed to deploy damage an enemy unit by 1, dominance, damage it by 3 instead. Again, we felt like a bit more lore friendly. It made more sense to have this on the Warrior than on the Hound.
Yeah. There he is.
We're moving things a bit. Sorry if that causes confusion, but we feel like this makes more sense in the long run. We have a section for monsters left. Again, most of the cards we're not talking about.
Honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions. She-Troll is getting a subtle change. She's becoming melee whenever a unit is destroyed during your turn, boost self by 2. It is no longer whenever an allied unit. Yep. So now if you destroy an enemy during your turn, she will buff herself by 2.
Yeah.
So that's it's a bit of a buff for her.
I like her.
And the last major change that we did to monsters was Adastriga. She is now deploy, damage an enemy unit by 2, dominance, damage it by 4 instead. Her power has gone from 3 to 5, her provision from 8 to 7.
Yeah.
So she has a bit more condition on her damage, but she has significant more power and lowered provisions, so she is much more of an interesting card and fits the dominance archetype.
Cool.
So we're doing a pass on dominance. A lot of these changes are keeping in mind what we want to do for the first expansion. I know it's not coming in the very near future, but we're hoping to keep expanding this in the future.
Cool. That went quickly.
That's a lot of talking, though.
Yeah.
All right.
You
I'm trying to be efficient.
Through it.
People want the information, yeah?
You stormed through it, man. Really quickly. All right. So what, Skellige next?
Skellige. Yep.
Why am I typing Skellige?
Like, that is not a thing. We'll just talk about it. The leader ability, Reckless Flurry. Or Fury. Is it Flurry? It's Flurry, yeah. Now ignores armor. A lot of you guys complained that this leader ability lost a lot of power when we added armor to the game. It was much harder to get your Bloodthirst with it. Now your Reckless Flurry will ignore armor. So it is much more consistent than it was before. This should definitely make this archetype much more powerful than it was. Yeah. Yeah. This should be a nice buff to any certain SK archetype for sure.
Yeah. What about discard?
So I think this was almost a joke when we were saying it. We want discard to be more of a tool than an archetype. We want it to be a way for Skellige to sort of control its hand and adapt to it, not be an entire archetype that an entire set of card revolves around and is useless with it.
And dropping power on the board and stuff like that.
We haven't fundamentally changed that much with it right now, but it is just a general philosophy that we're heading towards. We want it to, like, for example, contribute less to the board, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Although, I believe some examples like, what's the mage? Anyways, the discard spell, deal 2 damage. Coral's staying as she is, for example. I think she might have a provision or power buff,
I think she does. She does. I remember.
But her ability remains the same, yeah?
Yeah.
Brokvar Hunter, for example, now is order damage unit by 2, cooldown 2. Whenever you discard a card, reduce cooldown by 1. So now he'll be more reliable regardless of whether you discard something or not. He doesn't require it. And I think it fits in line with a lot of other cards in this and other factions. Yeah. The other change that we did that's very discard specific in terms of ability is Heime Skald is now draw a card, then discard a card. If anyone's wondering, that's a switching of the order, and it has very significant impact. So now you can discard the card you draw. If you switch the order, you had to discard something that was already in your hand before doing it. The only problem is if you play him with a full hand, whoops, you just lost a card.
Yeah.
So I think it's better, it's more in line to what other discard cards we're doing, and we feel like it's stronger that way. Bloodthirst. Skellige is getting a lot of work here, guys.
Yeah.
We really felt Skellige was due for some love.
Syndicate, spoiler, the ones that got the most changes?
I believe so, yeah. This update we focused a lot on Skellige and Syndicate, and we will continue to focus on whichever faction we feel deserves our love the most. I'm feeling monsters will receive some love in the future updates.
Ooh.
If it continues to struggle to be at the top tier.
That's a nice Licarino.
Bloodthirst. So I made a whole category of cards we changed for Bloodthirst. Demon Pirate Captain ability has been changed. He's now damaged an enemy unit by 1, Bloodthirst 2, damage it by 3 instead. Again, this is just adding a bit of consistency to this card. If you do not have Bloodthirst 2, at least it still plays as a 4x4, 4/4. If you don't do this change, it was a bit too much of a gamble card compared to the other ones that have a potential for or a ceiling of 6 for 4. So this is a slight buff, but I think it's a meaningful one. On Crate War Crier ability has been changed to Bloodthirst 1. At the end of your turn, boost self by 1. So again, this is adding another tool for Skellige to really care about Bloodthirst. Yeah. As in having an engine that values it. Wild Boar of the Sea, I think, is a really fun change. I remember, especially earlier last year, really trying to get this card to work, but it was hard to get value out of it.
It's true.
But now, this is a much more interesting card. It's damaged all damaged enemy units by 1. So everything that's already in the red text, let's say, will get damaged by 1, and then damage everything by 1. Yeah. So it is automatically a crazy strong finisher. It should give you lots of Bloodthirst. It should really benefit from things actually being Bloodthirst. I expect Skellige to be able to use this as a finisher, especially against someone that is filling up the board.
Yeah, that seems very strong.
His provision did go from 10 to 11, but I think
it's still worth it.
I think it's worth it. It might maybe we'll need to nerf it a little bit in terms of provision of power, but I think this ability is much healthier, much better, especially if you consider the change that we just did to Reckless Flurry. There should be definitely a damage archetype or wounded Bloodthirst archetype entirely
floating
possible
around
within Skellige now. And the last change that I would consider Bloodthirst related is the Giant Boar. Now, the giant boar always used to do deploy melee boost self by 1 for every damaged unit. We decided to add a bit of flexibility to this card by adding deploy ranged, boost self by the amount an enemy unit is damaged. So even if you haven't managed to get a lot of Bloodthirst down, let's say you get that high base power unit down low, because you're running out of good Bloodthirst targets, you can still get quite a decent value from Giant Boar, right? To get his 7 provision, you would at least have to have something damaged by 3, which is not that far-fetched. Yeah. So it adds a bit more survivability to this card.
All right.
Honorable
mentions. For Bloodthirst, we had discard Bloodthirst, and now honorable.
Honorable mention for Skellige. Again, lots of cards have been changed that we're not talking about today, or we would be making the stream way too long, and I think it would get a bit dry. Yeah. Is Scoia'tael. Scoia'tael was a simple damage card, and considering lore where he's all brave and he runs in and he gets killed immediately by 1 hit, we thought it was a lot more lore friendly, a lot more interesting for Skellige to make him a high power, lower provision card. It fits a bit what we do with other cards with Skellige. So he's a 10 for 7, but if he gets brought down to 5, he dies. Yeah. So I think it's just a fun change. It's a bit better than what he was before. Yeah. Yeah. But he needs to be kept alive. Yeah, pretty much. He dies a bit easier. Yeah. All right. And I think that's it for Skellige.
So NR. NR will be a quick one. Northern Realms.
Northern Realms. We did very little for Northern Realms. A lot less than what people expected. However, oh my God, surprise, surprise. Pincer Maneuver is going from 15 to 12 provisions. We're nerfing that sucker down 3 provisions. It's just too popular. It's too easy. You'll notice with a lot of the other things we're doing, bam, 3 provisions down. Get that deck going. Can still hopefully be viable, but Pincer Maneuver is going to be a lot harder to auto win in this next season's meta. Yep. So hopefully that makes you guys happy. Maybe that was one of the bigger ones. Maybe it wasn't Redea, actually. That was the number 1 thing you guys wanted. Maybe this is what you guys wanted most anything else. We're not planning on killing play 2 cards in 1 turn type leader abilities, but we do believe that they were overvalued in terms of provisions for sure. In honorable mentions for Northern Realms, we did do a few other provision and power treats changes. Yes. Is Eratu's Adept got a subtle change. She only now gains Zeal if you control a mage. It used to be always Zeal. We felt like this card was supporting non-mage archetypes too easily. So this just brings her in a little bit, but still allows her to reach the same potential she had before. Just a bit too auto strong. Yeah,
there's a couple more things, but we won't be really getting into those because, like,
it's going to be a different meta next month for sure.
It's totally different meta for sure.
If you guys expecting the next month to be exactly the same, I would be surprised.
Scoia'tael. Totally not happening. Scoia'tael. Everybody's like, Harmony.
Kill that Harmony. Yeah.
What about Harmony? So what's the overall?
We don't feel as badly about Harmony as the community seems to feel. We do agree that it's kind of annoying that it's been at the top for so long, but we hopefully by bringing a few other things up,
Scoia'tael's fine.
It'll go down a bit. I think we will be nerfing some of their key tools a little bit. We won't go through all of them right now, but there won't be much significant. I think starting with Mystic Echo. Yeah. Mystic Echo, like Pincer Maneuver, will go from 13 to 12. The double play will be brought down to that level. I think there is actually, it's way down the line, and I'm going to skip to it now because it does affect Mystic Echo now that I think about it. Is Nilfgaardian Justice actually got a rework as well?
True.
Nilfgaardian Justice, this was for the dwarves. This was a big Mystic Echo problem with the dwarves in the past. We'll get to that one later, actually.
Yeah, we'll show it later.
But that one also got a change, so it's not as abusable with Mystic Echo. And let's move on.
Call of Harmony. Yeah. One more, since we're on the topic of leaders.
Call of Harmony, we are afraid, will replace Mystic Echo with a 1 provision nerf. No. So we've also nerfed Call of Harmony by 1 provision, so from 16 to 15. And we'll be keeping a strong eye on it. One subtle change that we did that I almost wasn't sure was worth mentioning today is we did add a category/tag to all the scenarios. They are now officially scenarios.
Scenarios, exactly.
So this, I believe, has an impact on Harmony decks. It will count as a tag, I believe.
Yeah.
Traps.
Traps.
Let's talk about traps a little bit.
Since we can start actually with Deadeye Ambush here.
Deadeye Ambush has been changed to Order, Spawn an Elven Deadeye in Allied Row, Charge 3. It's essentially the same leader abilities before, however, now there's not such a reliance on traps having existed. We didn't feel like forcing you to convert a trap was adding significant layer to it. It was making this leader ability a bit harder to justify for reliability reasons. Yeah. And we feel like traps, again, like discard, is more of a mechanic and a tool inside of a faction more than an archetype.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the types of cards that they have access to, not a whole archetype being built around it. At least for now. Who knows what we'll do in the future? But that's our current stance on traps.
Okay.
We talked a bit about tuning down Scoia'tael a little bit in a section I'm calling Toning Down the Bad Boys. I'm sure there's some others you guys would have liked, but let's start with Yavin. Yavin has now been changed to damage an enemy unit by the number of elf units in this row. This doesn't fundamentally change the card, but it does give it a ceiling. Right now it can only deal max damage based off how many cards in a row and not the whole board. It just brings it in line a little bit, makes it a little bit less ridiculous. I believe there's also the Dwarven who boosts by the number of dwarves is also getting a similar treatment. Barclay's being limited to a row as well, following this same logic. So we're just getting a slightly more reasonable ceiling on these cards. Weeping Willow is a bit too strong, especially with Harmony. We'll be keeping an eye on it, but for now we're changing his power from 6 to 5. Again, it's a minor nerf, but between all the power and provision changes we're doing, we're hoping that the meta will shift in a way where Harmony isn't as dominant as it is now. And we'll keep an eye on it. If we still feel like Harmony is rampant at the end of during the next season, then we may keep pushing it back. What I don't want us to do is I don't want us to knee-jerk and just kill an entire archetype within a faction by over-nerfing and then slowly trying to bring it back up. Like this is I mean, it's a long conversation we can have.
Yeah, we could talk for days about this, to be honest. And we actually talked for like an hour about these changes just before we started the stream. On and on and on and on. We could probably talk even more.
And I think the last tone down that we'll talk about really quick is both Etriel and Murlega, so her and her links, I guess, have their provisions increased by 1. So I think everyone could feel that these cards were a bit undercosted in terms of provision. So we definitely brought them down, but again, slightly. Moving on to honorable mentions. Again, I don't want to go through every provision and power word, just the ones that maybe were standing out a bit more. Treon Boar has had a slight little addition to it. It now gained Zeal if you control a Dryad. Otherwise, its power and provisions have not changed. Its ability remains the same. However, it is now capable of going immediately down. I know a lot of people might expect us to kill Oak or nerf Oak as well, but I believe we're going to stay away from that card right now because it's one of the few really strong finishers in Scoia'tael, and we need to leave them some tools. Waters is something we'll also be keeping an eye out, but for now we're not touching it.
Okay.
Fundamentally, at least.
Cool.
Moving on to leader tweaks for
Nilfgaard. The mighty empire of Nilfgaard.
Nilfgaard's a faction that we haven't fundamentally reworked or changed much, again ignoring minor provision power changes. We decided to nerf Enslave, and this is actually sort of a segue to a bigger conversation I'd like to have, and that's everyone's complaining about pincer maneuver and Harmony and Mystic Echo, but in fact the highest win rate leader in the game right now is Enslave. It's been like that for a long time.
True.
But because I think either people are a bit more tired of it, or it's not super popular right now. It's not seen as a problematic leader ability, but we see it as actually a bit too strong right now. So, the thing is, I feel like sometimes you guys are crying out or, asking us to tone something down, not because it's necessarily too strong, but because you're tired of seeing it.
No.
And I'm not sure it's always a wise idea to kill it with too strong of a provision. Yeah. So, but we are always keeping an eye on it. So Enslave, for example, is one that we just feel like in the current meta is a bit too strong. For those of you still playing it and dominating, sorry, we're actually keeping track and we toned it down.
And then also double cross, same thing, provision.
Double cross got actually a provision increase. Bonus. It's struggling a bit, so we brought it from 16 to 17.
Yeah.
Even though I think it just needed a little edge in the proper direction to be viable. So hopefully this gives it, makes it an interesting choice.
Agreed.
Lastly, the one card that's received a rework in Nilfgaard is Falsiri. Again, removing artifact removal from faction cards. Her ranged option has changed from remove an artifact to boost an agent by 3.
Yes.
This change may seem insignificant, but it is in line with what we want to do in the future, and wink wink, I can't say more than that. Tease. Sorry.
Good.
All right. Whew.
Last but not least, it's a big one.
Let's try to go through some of them a bit faster.
So, Syndicate, right?
The Syndicate. Syndicate is a faction I think if you really know how to play it, runs really well, but I think the leader abilities is something that lacks a bit of teasing on what you want to do.
Okay.
Like a lack of toughness and choice. It's too easy to go to, of course, wild card, and we wanted to play around with that. First, Congregate is getting a change. Instead of gaining coins at the end of using all your charges, you will gain a coin per charged use. Yeah. So now it is a slightly more interesting, although more math.
Yes.
To figure out how and when to use your charges. Blood Money's damage has been brought from 7 to 8. It's more in line with other faction leader abilities. I believe Slash from Northern Realms, for example. Jackpot provision has increased by 1, so it's went from 15 to 16. So I'm going to go through these fast. Off the Books also had a provision bonus change from 15 to 16. And Wildcard has gone down from 15 to 14. Yeah.
So I have them all here.
Now Wildcard should be a bit more of a consideration, not an auto choose for you.
Yeah.
Again, coming to artifact removal, I think is the next card would be the Tunnel Drill.
Yeah.
Tunnel Drill I think was touted as the strongest artifact removal faction specific card. It has been changed to
18 years in the sewers.
Profit 1, fee 3, damage an enemy unit by 1, increase damage by 1 for each adjacent crown splitter. So it'll be able to do 3 damage for 3 if you set it up with more crown splitters.
Tunnel Drill. Plunder. Eventide.
Eventide Plunderer ability has changed to gain 4 coins. If enemy controls an artifact, gain 6 coins instead. So instead of removing artifacts, you can still gamble with this tech card. It is not artifact removal, but it does show that we're not afraid to still play with the existence of artifacts in other cards. So in this case, if someone is playing artifacts, you do get extra coins. So it has a bit of its flavor from before. I think moving on to Passiflora.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, scenario
no one
upgrade
expected
time.
A change to a scenario.
I think the designers were admitting to me earlier today that this is the scenario they had the least amount of time to think about and prepare. So they were passionate about upgrading it a little bit. It's completely changed. Well, mostly changed. Scenario, progress whenever you play a blind die. So the condition has changed.
Yeah.
Prologue, spawn a sly seductress in this row. Chapter 1, spawn a Passiflora Peaches in this row. And Chapter 2, gain 6 coins. So it should be a bit more easy to progress. I know I had a bit of trouble with, it's already hard to manage your fees and your incomes when playing Syndicate. And I felt like I think we felt the scenario was forcing you to play in a weird order with those. Now, you'll have a bit more flexibility by just playing blind die cards.
Agreed. Nice.
And its provision has been changed from 12 to 14 to reflect this.
Simple.
Now it's time for, we got the moves like Hammond.
Yeah. Moves like Hammond.
Hammond, we felt like needing to change. Was pretty dull with pirates. He's cross-faction as well, and we felt like he was just bad.
Yeah.
So we've changed him to deploy, move an enemy unit to the other row, and give it bleeding 2. Yeah? increase bleeding by 1 for each adjacent pirate. So even if you don't really necessarily care about the bleeding, it's a 6 for 8 that moves. It has some power on it. I think this will be an interesting card to consider both for Syndicate and for Skellige. A lot more than it was before.
True.
And that's why we're making the move, Joe.
Moves like Ammon.
We're almost there. We're almost there.
We're getting there. Firesworn. We'll talk about the Firesworn.
Firesworn, there's 2 cards we've reworked to try and make that archetype a bit more interesting. One, Excommunication, has been changed to banish an allied unit, then play the top card from your deck. If the target was a Firesworn, look at the top 3 cards from your deck and play one instead. So I believe this is essentially what I was doing before. However, if you target a Firesworn, now you have more chance of getting a card you want. So it's a little bit more reliable, which I think makes this card much more interesting than it was before. Significantly so. Looking at 3 cards and choosing one is a pretty strong effect. You can kill a 2-power token to do that. I think this card will be considered to be playable now.
For sure.
And the second card we've changed is
Procession of Penance.
This card felt like its ceiling was too low to be really interesting. So what we did with Procession of Penance is we actually buffed it from 10 to 12 power. However, the initial damage he does to himself is increased, but the amount is reduced for every Fireswarm is also increased. So his range of power is higher, both at the floor and at the ceiling, and we hope this makes the card much more interesting to consider including.
Yes. Don't read chat. Don't be tempted by that.
Last but not least,
the honorable mention goes to Nilfgaard Justice.
So we talked a bit about this one before. Even though it's not seeing much abuse right now, we did have a big dwarf double engine problem in the past, especially for Call of Harmony, Mystic Echo, yes. So spawn a Cleaver's Muscle in your melee row and play a Bronze Dwarf from your deck. In fact, if you do decide to pull a Bronze Engine from your deck, you might get more value from the Cleaver's Muscle. I think there's also interesting implications with this card, and I believe the Tunnel Drill we were looking at earlier. This would give you the 3 damage with the Tunnel Drill if you play Nilfgaard Justice and then put it in between. This is stopping us from allowing people to play 2 Bronze Engines from their deck with this, potentially twice. So it's still pretty high power with the 5 shield.
Yeah.
Alrighty then, that was...
We made it to the end. Woo, that's a lot.
I would say this doesn't cover half the changes we did in cards. Most of them were smaller. Again, there's a reason we bit faster. This was already a pretty long stream. We hope the meta shakes up really nice. We'll be doing probably a more minor balance update at the end of next month. We'd rather not do a major one like of this size every month. First of all, it's a lot of work for us, but also secondly, we'd like the meta to stabilize a bit before we try to decide what to do with it. But we will be keeping an eye on, we will try to listen. Let's hope Skellige rises back up. Let's see how Monsters Wild Hunt does after these changes.
Agreed.
And
yes, and please do not say this is bad. You will have to actually play it to know if it's bad or good. You can't make judgment based on a couple of changes. No. And why am I so sad? I'm sad because I'm reading chat. Confirmed.
If anyone, because I did read chat a few times, if anyone's wondering why I'm tired, I have 2 very small children, and my viruses and sleep. Yeah. It's really hard when you have a 2-year-old and a baby.
My daughter is also a little bit sickly, and I'm marathon training, so I'm just overtrained pretty much right now.
So actually, I'm full of energy and happiness. It's just my eyes; they're burning. No,
yeah.
I'm good.
No, we're good.
Have a good freaking weekend or week, guys. Enjoy the patch. Yeah, it's the beginning of the week. Yeah.
Weekend, yes, confirmed.
Nobody works tomorrow.
Yay.
All right.
No, you're working. Everybody's working tomorrow.
Good evening.
It'll be nice though. It'll be a good start to a Monday. Days off till Sunday.
I like 1-day work weeks. They're nice.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
Yeah. See you guys.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next month. I mean this month, end of this month. I mean next month. But yeah, we'll season transition day before.
You haven't gotten rid of us yet.
No way. Thank you and see ya.